Albert Breer joins us on the program, of course, senior NFL reporter for the Monday Morning Quarterback. How big a topic was Mike Tomlin at the owners' meeting?
I mean, it was interesting hearing it. You guys really kicked the hornet's nest there, I guess. What's interesting about it, though, to me, Dan, and I think that there's rhyme and reason behind this. I don't think people realize Mike Tomlin now has been in Pittsburgh for as long as Bill Cowher was. And it seems like that's flown by, but it's true. He's at 15 years. That's how long Cowher was there. And so, I think that there's just a natural thing where people are going to start asking the question, is there going to be a next phase of his career? Which I'm sure is how the thought came up with the USC people. And I can tell you that, like, when I was asking around a couple weeks ago about the Raiders job after John Gruden resigned, there were, like, would the Raiders load up and make a huge run at Mike Tomlin to restore their credibility? And it actually makes some sense, right? Like, because you think how long these guys generally stay in these jobs. And, 15 years is a long time. So I understand, like, why Tomlin had to do what he did and why he had to say what he said. But, like, I think, it's just at a natural point now where he's been there for 15 years. The quarterback's probably going to be gone after next year. There are big questions going forward. If you're another team or, like, one of these big-time college programs, and you and I both know there are a handful of them that are as good as any NFL job. No matter how NFL coaches want to talk about, there are a number of those that have as many pluses as NFL jobs do. You'd be doing yourself a disservice not to ask those questions when you're talking about your job. Doesn't mean it's going to progress anywhere, but if you're not thinking of ideas like that, if you're one of those programs or one of those NFL teams that have openings, then you're not doing your job. You should be asking those questions. Again, doesn't mean he has any interest, doesn't mean it goes anywhere, but that's the way a program like USC should be thinking.
Yeah, and, when he says, that, there's not a blank check big enough by a booster, well, there probably is. He makes $8 million with the Steelers, and if somebody really wanted him, then they could, give him $12, $15 million a year if they wanted to. But, look, I would never leave the Steelers, but I don't know Mike Tomlin, so I don't know what drives him. But he shouldn't be offended. And he shouldn't bring Sean Payton and Andy Reid into the equation because Carson Palmer didn't mention those coaches there.
Right. It's like I said, I think it was sort of taken as it's like a game of telephone, right? It starts as one thing, and then by the time it gets to the other party, it's something else entirely.
Yeah.
And it almost sounded like by the time it got to Tomlin, it went from USC has discussed this as like kind of a concept or an idea to Mike Tomlin could actually do this. You know what I mean? And it kind of felt like that's how he received the message, which I think that's the explanation to why he would take offense to it. I can't imagine his name being on a list and hey, let's just take a swing at this and see what happens. I don't know why that would be all that offensive at all.
Yeah, James Franklin's name for USC and LSU. Now, that, to me, is legitimate. Mike Tomlin, I don't think he has any interest in doing that. All right, I kind of gave the framework for what I'm told on Deshaun Watson, that we knew that they could come up with the framework for the trade itself. It's the legal framework. What do you think the chances are that Watson is traded by next Tuesday?
Well, so Miami's been in contact with him. Carolina actually talked to him this week for the first time in a couple months. And I think Carolina is sort of still monitoring it. Denver and Philly have been monitoring it. They're less involved right now. So, I think for everybody it's the same thing. It's what's going to happen with this league situation. And, it's interesting because the way you laid it out, right? And it's true. And I no reason to doubt John McClain, but if the owner in Miami, who I've been told has some trepidation over the idea of this, if the owner in Miami is saying we need this thing settled and we need clarity on what's going to happen legally and with the league over the next 6 days, Dan, how much leverage would that give? Watson would not be able to do and I don't want to diminish the accusations or anything. How much leverage would that give the accusers? You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't see a scenario where everything gets settled in the next 6 days. You know what I mean? It just seems unrealistic to me. And it's just Watson's come this far and not wanted to settle those cases. Like, would being on the precipice of a trade push him to do a deal that he's, basically refused to do over the course of the last 6 months? It seems unrealistic.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. I didn't think of that. If I'm one of the accusers and then he's traded, are you going to? Now it feels like we have more leverage on you for you to settle and on our terms as opposed to yours. But if I'm Stephen Ross, will the commissioner tell him what the punishment's going to be? And if I'm Stephen Ross, can I ask Deshaun Watson to settle these cases, and then I'll make the trade for you?
And yeah, you can. I think the hard thing again is like the league has been, despite what Roger said yesterday, the league has been very vague with the teams about what would happen if he was traded, and what would happen if they put him back on the field and how a suspension would work. And I think the league's been intentionally vague on that, Dan. I think the reason why they've been intentionally is because I think they've got the situation right now where they want it, where they don't have to act because he's not on the field. And the Texans are essentially doing the league a solid because, again, the league doesn't have to act, but he's not in the public eye. And so this doesn't get discussed on the Sunday morning shows. This isn't a weekly topic. There are protesters outside of a stadium. If he gets traded and goes back on the field, the dynamic changes altogether. And so, I think that piece of it, I know, and for some teams that were involved, has cooled some interest there. And yeah, it's just really, really hard for me to see where there's going to be a whole lot more clarity legally or from the league in the next 6 days.
The Washington football team, that investigation, the commissioner basically saying there's nothing to see here. Let's move on. How does this go to the next step where they actually have some of this investigation revealed publicly?
I the history tells us it's not going to be revealed. I hate, my experience here has sort of taught me to be a skeptic, Dan. And you can look at the history, right? So Tom Brady deflated football's 250-page report. You can Google it. It's right there on the internet. Richie Incognito, bullying, and basically a middle school situation, right? And 150-page report. Federal investigators conducting these reports. You can find them on the internet. Ray Rice, the domestic violence situation. That was obviously way more serious than Incognito or Brady, but that had a 100-page report. Now try to find anything on Jerry Richardson. Try to find anything coming from the league on Jerry Jones or Robert Kraft. It just doesn't happen, And so I think this is the way the league's always conducted business when it comes to owners. And, I think anything they've said about owners being held to a higher standard than players, it rings hollow when you actually look at the facts. And my guess is they're going to just keep kicking the can down the road and hoping that people lose interest in the story. It's just, I said, I think if you're another owner, I would think that you would look at this and say, you need to at least have some transparency on this, and this is reflecting poorly on all of us. I think the issue is that no owner wants the precedent set of the league being able to take anyone's team away.
Yeah.
Their owners have skeletons in their closet, and so I think this is probably going to remain where it is right now. And nothing the commissioner said yesterday would change my mind on that.
I know you have a busy day. Thanks for joining us on short notice, Albert. We appreciate it.
You got it, Dan, anytime.
That's Albert Breer, Monday morning quarterback.